Welcome to the DRF College Sports Podcast, brought to you by DRF Sports. Daily Racing Form, America's most trusted name in horse racing, is now providing sports bettors with exclusive data analytics, previews, videos, and expert picks on all major sports. Bet smarter and have more fun doing it. It's the DRF College Sports Podcast, and now your hosts, Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlin. Ready, set, bet.
Welcome into the DRF College Sports Podcast. My name's Jack Fitzpatrick. As always, I'm joined by the one, the only, the Bennett Conlin. He's coming off a 2-2 week in his best bets, and that's how we're going to start this week. Well, first we'll start with this. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I'm hanging in there. My picks are lukewarm. My body's lukewarm, but it is what it is. I got a couple solid best bets. The ones that I didn't were reasonably competitive, which obviously means nothing to your bank account, right? If you
your bankroll.
I was reasonably competitive out there, folks. But I don't know. I'd prefer like a close loss to getting absolutely hammered. I don't know about you on losing bets. Sometimes maybe it's nice if you know by like 3 minutes in that you're going to lose, but
so it depends. Both as a sports fan watching my favorite teams and as a sports bettor watching teams I bet on, it is kind of both ways. I think as a sports fan, I prefer my team getting blown out early, and so I can turn it off at halftime. As a sports bettor, I think I prefer close because it makes you feel good about your pick. Like when they get blown out, all of that research you did, just like a couple of days ago for drf.com/sports, I think I picked Wisconsin over Michigan State. Michigan State wiped the floor with Wisconsin, but I did so much research. I was looking at analytics and betting trends and angles and past performances. And I was like, Wisconsin's got this. And they get kind of destroyed, and Michigan State looks fantastic. And you're sitting there and you're like, nothing I did means anything. So
this is fair. They did have a late. I think Tyler Wall didn't play in that game.
He did, and I didn't know that. And then I went into then I picked the Illinois-Michigan State game for last night, and I was doing all my research on the injuries, and Kofi Coburn didn't play. But apparently they didn't cover. They didn't cover the 5-point spread.
What did that I didn't check. I imagine that closed at something different though, right?
I believe it closed at what I saw. It was like closed at 4. Just because
really? I figured it would.
The news of Kofi didn't hit the books until literally 5 minutes before tip.
Vegas Insider has -2, which would still not be a cover. So they only won by 1. Is that right?
Oh, I got all the way down to on DRF. I saw it get down to -4, but -2.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
either way, it seems like the line movement didn't help you, and that's a tough one though. I saw you had that analysis PEC wrote, and I was like, that is tough because you're banking a little bit on injury news. So for them to still be favored without Kofi Coburn and then to also win but not cover was kind of fascinating to me. I know they were at home, but like, dude's pretty important, right?
Yeah, like I feel like he's worth a few points, not more than 2 points to a spread. But I think if we knew that coming into it, I think Michigan State would have been favored. But the fact that it was so up in that was probably the most up in the air injury news I had seen in a while. Like,
yeah.
They knew he wasn't playing because he didn't warm up with the team either. Like, they didn't even give it a go. They were like, he's not playing, but we're not giving that information to Michigan. That was the most college athletics thing I've ever seen.
That's classic college sports to get really in the weeds with us for JMU fans. And Mark Byington, the head coach of the Dukes, was on his like little radio show essentially this week. And they asked him about injuries, and he goes, I'm going to give you the Bill Belichick answer. And he goes, there's a competitive advantage to not telling you. So he didn't tell the local media member ahead of this Thursday game against Drexel. So if you got JMU doing it to try to beat Drexel with a competitive advantage, you can imagine Illinois is definitely trying to keep Michigan State on its heels.
Especially Jamie's covering – I'm about to name names that mean nothing to the listeners, but Jamie's covering up the injuries of the third off-the-bench point guard in Jalen Hodge and the second off-the-bench point guard in Tyree Iheanacho, where Illinois was covering up arguably the best player in the nation in Kofi Coburn.
Yeah, it's like National Player of the Year stuff compared to like, hey, we got this guy in, and he's a really solid backup point guard. So certainly different there. We both had some JMU bets in our last week if we want to go over any of the best bets quickly. I really feel good about that JMU College of Charleston over that hit 95-94. I don't actually even know what it closed at. Maybe I can look that up, but it certainly hit. Purdue spread and Utah State spread were kind of heartbreaking losses for me, but the NC State one over Virginia was a late ad in the podcast. I'm glad I added it. Ended up winning by 14. They shot out of their mind against Virginia. Interesting thing to keep in mind with UVA, if you want to bet on or against them. I think they're 8-0 now after losses. So they've been bouncing back really well. Tony Bennett seems to have done a nice job kind of understanding what the issue is with them and maybe working on it. And then some other issues get exploited, but they seem to bounce back well after they lose. So certainly a team to keep an eye on here. I think they're probably due for a little bit of a streak because they're not that good, but the fact they're finding ways to win in the ACC is, I think, a testament to Tony Bennett's coaching.
Yeah, 100%. On the other side of the spectrum, I got San Francisco, nailed that one.
That was a good one.
They lost by 16 and the spread was 17. So nailed that one. Big
that was
time.
Kind of what you said, though, in the analysis.
Yeah, I think I said something like they're not – they'll keep it. I think we both talked about a backdoor cover. And it was – I didn't watch the game because it's an 11 o'clock WCC tip. And I'm not staying up to watch San Francisco lose by 16.
Fair.
JMU. I really thought JMU was going to bounce back against UNCW. No, it was for the Charleston. It was for the Charleston game. I thought they were going to bounce back and cover the spread.
I think you had UNCW in the outline.
Either way, I thought JMU would cover the spread in both of those games, and they didn't cover the spread in either one of those games. I thought they'd be bounce backs. Granted, only one of them I gave out as best bet, but it doesn't matter because they both lost.
Hey,
Auburn.
Hey,
what?
Competitive showing. They were up like 12 in the second half, -6 is the spread, and they blew it late. So take that to the bank.
They lost. They didn't just blow it.
You can message.
They lost.
Message your sports book. If you're in Iowa, I guess you can message the DRF sports book now and say, hey, who is competitive showing? What can you do for me? They're going to say nothing, but it's worth noting to the book that you were competitive.
That's a great point. Maybe that's what we do from now on. We're going to be the biggest pain in DRF Sportsbooks' side as I'm an employee of them. So I'll just message my bosses every day. Hey, what are we going to do about this really close loss? It was competitive, but I think everyone should get their money back.
They had it. I swear they had it with 10 minutes left.
And then I had Auburn money line over Kentucky. Nailed it. I'm all over the Auburn money, all over the Auburn bandwagon. I will captain that ship here on this podcast. Auburn, baby, they are the best team in the country. Analytically speaking, they're the 8th best. But, in our hearts, eye test, Bruce Pearl's got those Tigers rolling. Let's ignore last night's 1-point win over Missouri.
Yeah, I think that was kind of a fascinating I can't remember if you previewed it or just tweeted about it, but kind of a fascinating spot for them, right? First game where they're number 1 in school history. It's on the road against a team that's really not that good. Yeah. So a pretty huge letdown spot, which they did, but they found a way to win, but obviously didn't come close to covering. I think it was like 12.5 or something. So I'm interested to monitor Auburn the rest of the way because that's a really good basketball team that has destroyed my Tennessee future. But good for them. Good for them. They're a good team.
Missouri also, earlier in the season, we can talk about this too. Well, we'll talk about it in a little bit when we break down the SEC. Missouri had that win over Alabama, and somehow Alabama's still the 19th best team in the country, according to Ken Pom. Alabama just lost to Georgia last night.
They're really playing horribly.
They are bad. Like, the problem with – and again, we'll get into this in a little bit. The problem with Alabama is that – and we've talked about it before – they can either shoot the lights out and beat anyone in the country, or because they're so analytically driven of behind the 3-point line or from 2 feet in, like you can, if you play a good defensive game against them, you can beat them. But
yeah, and they're also not great defensively. Like that's a thing where I think last year you look at their numbers, they were 3rd in Ken Pom in defensive efficiency nationally. This year they're 68th. So they still score a little bit, but you're right. If they have an off night, the defense is not able to pick it up. So they kind of have to be smacking down the threes. They're not shooting the 3 well. They're shooting the 2 really well, but they're not doing a great job making some of those outside jumpers. So if you're playing good teams, that can be trouble. And hey, they lost to Missouri and Georgia, so maybe you don't even have to play a good team to be in trouble.
Damn, the shade there.
Not good losses.
All right, moving on from that, we have patented 3rd week in a row, low thrill scores. You ready for this?
Yeah, these are important. I want to do a quick look back to see how we did last week. So Murray State, I forget what the line was, but Murray State beat Eastern Illinois by 40. I believe I had that one correct.
That covered. Yep. I think it was around
that definitely
20.
covered. I want to double check here. Friday, I can't remember which side I was on in that game, to be honest with you. But it was a nail biter with St. Francis only winning by 1 over Central Connecticut. I wanted to say I might have taken Central Connecticut. I should probably do a better job tracking these.
I wrote it down, but I didn't mark which one you
That's
picked.
amazing. And then Murray State, I think I picked them twice. They didn't cover in that second blowout game. They're supposed to win by like 20 plus. They won by 8. So starting to wonder if Murray State's broken. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, those were pretty much.
Then Bryant. Don't forget about St. Francis, New York against Bryant.
I want to say I went with Bryant, but I don't remember here. They won by 17. So I think that was
a cover too.
I think that was a cover as well.
All right. So now we're going into the low thrill score here. So first up is North Dakota. We got North Dakota. They're taking on South Dakota State. South Dakota State is favored to win by 13. No, 23.
Yeah, looking like it's a big one. They've been pretty good this year, although they don't have a ton of like monstrous wins necessarily. But at home, they tend to play a little better. I'm gonna go with South Dakota State. They're 17-4. Here's a question for you: where do you think they rank offensive efficiency? South Dakota State and KenPom.
Well, if they're 78th, they've got to be top 50.
Their defense is 272nd.
Their offense has to be top 10.
9th. It's got a 9th. Leading the country in three-point shooting, second in effective field goal percentage. They don't turn it over much. They're pretty darn good offensively. I'll take them against North Dakota, which is just, I think, to be honest with you, from what I'm looking at, it looks like they're dead last in defensive efficiency. So I'll take the 9th best offense against the worst defense, and I'll say they beat them by like 40 and hope for the best.
All right, I love that one. Going to Friday, we have Canisius taking on Monmouth.
Monmouth lost 4 in a row at one point, which is a little surprising because they were a pretty good team this year.
They weren't they one of the better? Like, didn't they start undefeated and like they were undefeated against the spread for a while? They're one of the most profitable teams against the spread.
They've had some good success, especially the last couple of seasons. They lost to your boys from Charlotte in the opener, and then I think they rattled off like 7 or 8 in a row. They have a win over Pitt. Got a win over Pitt. They beat Cincinnati on the road. They got a win over Towson on the road, which is actually a sneaky good win for those that follow that conference. Almost beat Iona, went to overtime. So I still like them. They're a good team. I'll say Monmouth covers.
Minus 14 is the line there.
Yeah.
Still feel comfortable with minus 14?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Just wanted to make sure. Then we're going to Saturday, which I'm excited to talk about Saturday. Kentucky, Kansas, Baylor, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas. Is that the Big 12 SEC showdown?
Yeah, I think they've got some of those matchups, which is – I kind of like that crossover.
I love that in the middle of the season. Last year they did, and it was so much fun.
It's nice to have like one of those breaks from conference play where you're not going to lose ground in the conference standings, but it's still a big-time opportunity resume-wise.
And that day has a fantastic game. I hope you're ready for it. Maine, Vermont. Vermont favored by 25.
I'm sad to hear about Maine. They played Virginia a couple of years ago. They were supposed to play them in the pandemic year, and they didn't. But their coach, Richard Barron, actually recorded a song about like playing UVA, put it on Twitter. It was awesome. And people were like, wow, this is funny. He would like reply to you directly and be like, oh, thanks so much for listening. Love that guy. Just seems like a genuine dude. But they're 4-13 and their 3 wins are against non-Division I teams. I mean, they're not very good. They're bad on both ends. They're really bad offensively. They did just pick up a win. They did just pick up their first win on Monday against a Division I opponent, although they have to play that same team on the road tonight, Wednesday night. Vermont has consistently been one of the best mid-majors in the country. I've analyzed this game for too long, Jack.
Yeah, you're talking so much about this game. Keep it going.
Give me Vermont.
Okay, Vermont at minus 25.
I always just pick the good teams, but I don't know.
Yeah, I can tell. St. Peter's, Iona. And this is the last
Sunday game?
This is the Sunday game. Let's keep this one quick. Iona favored by 13.
There could be some Rick Pitino back to Louisville rumors circulating around this game. Chris Mack is gone. Give me St. Peter's so I change it up. I've taken way too many of the good teams. Give me St. Peter's to cover.
You know what's hilarious? out of all of the games, the way you were talking about, I thought for sure you were going to have Maine cover against Vermont. You would have ridden with Iona in that spot. But alas, you did not. You did not.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay. Moving on from all that low thrill score. I know it's what we all come to the podcast. We all flock to the podcast for. Last week we talked a little bit about ACC, which was spurred by your NC State UVA pick. And I kind of want to turn this into more of a conference talk every week. It was between the SEC and the WCC this week. But after Alabama lost last night to Georgia, I think it's worth talking SEC. Do you agree?
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Jack.
Thanks for the patronage with that one. So the SEC, led by Auburn. Auburn has one loss this season. Best team in the country according to the AP Top 25. I think 8th best according to Ken Palm. Kentucky's right there behind him. 4 losses. Kentucky's looking good. I'm not sure of the status of Ty Washington. When he went out against Auburn, Kentucky kind of faltered a little bit. Then you have A&M, kind of surprising there, 15-4, 4-2 in conference. Tennessee, and then you go down a little bit further. Alabama, LSU. LSU started the season really hot, but was that because of a poor non-conference schedule? Yes, that's the reason they started so hot and they looked good. They're not that good of a team. Yeah, they have the best defense in Ken Palm, but I don't know. The SEC, do you think – we'll start with just something really broad. Do you think they're going to win the national championship? Do you think one of their teams will win the national championship?
Jeez. I mean, maybe.
Could be. A team's going to win it.
I would lean toward the field, I guess, in that situation, only because, and like I had mentioned, I have the Tennessee future or whatever. I think the league's really good. I think you got a team like LSU I think is decent. I think they should be a tournament team, even though their offense, you mentioned, struggling. I think Alabama in the end can be a tournament team. You can even look at, Arkansas and some of these others. Mississippi State's not terrible. A&M's got some things going. So like tournament teams, but I don't think any of those teams are legitimate title threats. I don't know that Kentucky is. Like, I like them. Some of it you mentioned depends on the health of guys. I like Tennessee. I had that Final Four future. Tennessee doesn't look the part of like a national title contender, especially when you put them on neutral floors as a seed that's probably not like a 1 seed. So Auburn seems like the team that they could be. Yeah. So then you're essentially asking me, do I think Auburn or Kentucky are going to win the national title? And I don't. I think they have a chance to. I think they're really good. But if I had to pick a conference or something like that, I'd lean Big 12 or Pac-12. I really like the Pac-12's top.
Pac-12, wow.
I think Arizona and UCLA are legit. I think USC at the top. So you can get 3 that you really like there. We haven't talked about it much, but like Oregon's turned it on. They did lose on Tuesday, but Oregon's turned it on a lot since their horrendous start. Like Oregon seems like a tournament team. I'm not saying they're going to, shock the world, win the whole thing, but they were a team coming into the year people thought would be good. They're playing better. You obviously still have Gonzaga, an honorary Pac-12 member in many people's minds. Shout out Titus and Tate. I think they'll be there. And it's just, I don't know. It's hard for me to think that an Auburn or a Kentucky is going to get through the whole thing over some of these teams. I would just take the field over the SEC.
I like that. Do you think Alabama is completely washed?
I don't know. I don't know on them. I'm not sold on them, but I also feel like at their best, if they can play a little better defense, they're pretty good. Like they've got guards that can do some nice things and get toward the rim reasonably well. And I like that part about them. I like Nate Oates a lot. It's just weird because they're a team that they still beat Gonzaga and Houston. It's like, wow, like that's their ceiling. They also have a nice win over Tennessee. Like they also beat LSU. Like they have a lot of really good wins, but then you look, it's like, how do you lose to Georgia? How do you lose to Missouri? How do you get kind of smoked by Memphis? Memphis looked like a world beater in that game. So I think Alabama's interesting because I think Alabama could like lose in the first round, right? Because they have those weird streaky performances. But if they get to like the Sweet 16, I wouldn't want to be facing them.
Yeah. Last SEC question. And I'm actually really interested in this one. LSU started the season, 12-0. They were looking the part. They were looking really good. Will Wade had everyone firing on all cylinders, and now they're sitting at 15-4, 3-4 in conference play, and they're projected just to be 11-7 according to Ken Palm in conference play. Best defense in the country, but their offense, like you mentioned earlier, is slipping 130th in offensive efficiency. they just haven't looked great as of late. 3 straight losses, Arkansas, Alabama, and Tennessee, kind of the teeth of their schedule, but then they have Texas A&M coming up. They have really for a while, Texas A&M's their biggest game here for the next 2 weeks. So do you think they turn it around and kind of go on a little bit of a winning streak, or do you think we've seen LSU's kind of true colors?
So from today, when we're recording, January 26th through February 19th, they only play one Ken Pom top 50 team. Then after that, they got Kentucky. But I think they're going to win a bunch of games. This just feels like a midseason lull for them. I'm not saying they're like a national title contender, but I think they're going to rattle off a bunch of wins. I think they'll be a top 5 seed, somewhere in that range come March Madness. You still got some good wins on the resume with Kentucky and Tennessee, and even some non-conference ones that are like starting to look more impressive. Where like Liberty is not a bad win. Even like Belmont and Wake Forest has become a sneaky good win.
Yeah.
So like I think their resume come the end of the season is good. They don't have a bad loss, like based on the net and that kind of thing. The worst loss that they have is Arkansas. That's their only home loss. So I think they're going to rally off a bunch of wins coming down the stretch. If they do go 11-7, that would mean they would go 8-4 in their next 12 conference games. Like that seems pretty solid, but I think they could outplay that. I think they can maybe go 9-3, 10-2, something like that. And if they do that, then yeah, I feel pretty good about this team. So maybe not a national title contender, but still a very solid team, which kind of feel how I feel about the whole SEC. Seems pretty solid, but I don't know if it's winning the whole thing.
I like it. Great breakdown. Thank you. Thank you, in-house college basketball expert. Yeah, because that translates really well to a podcast.
I gave you a respectful bow for those.
Thank you. Thank you for dictating that one. Do you want to talk a little way too early bracket? I can't speak today. Earlier, I couldn't say the word statistics, and now I can't say bracketology.
I think we have to.
Who do you base your bracketology off of? Are you a Joe Lunardi guy?
This is really the only reason I wanted to talk about it. So they have the rankings on it's bracketmatrix.com. I don't really know who puts this together, but they essentially rank like the most accurate brackets, and they do it over a period of time with like variance and all this stuff, and you can get a ranking of like the top bracketologists over a certain period of time. And all I will say is the most like the easiest one to get right is Joe Lunardi. It's like posted all over ESPN. They're shoving it down your throat during games. They'll have the graphic come up. They'll be like, he predicts them as a 4 seed. Bracket Matrix over the last like 3 years has him as the 55th most accurate bracketologist. And you're probably thinking to yourself, there are 55 bracketologists, which
There's
is a
a
great
lot.
question.
I didn't realize there's 135.
Which is it's a fantastic question. But I think the thing that stands out to me is like you can find some people that are like pretty active on Twitter if you use it. That are more accurate. And I kind of like looking at those. Bracketville has an easy one to look at. He's a top 10. I guess Crazy Sports Dude has come on really strong here the last few years. But they have a lot of more accurate brackets. So that's really one of the main bracketology things I wanted to say is that you can look in some other places and find some people who are putting out these bracketologies on a somewhat regular basis that are probably more accurate with a lot less fanfare. So if you are someone who nerds out about like looking at where your team might fall, consider looking on Bracket Matrix because Joe Lunardi does a fine job, but a lot of the time it's like not as spot on as a lot of these other guys.
And that's Matrix with an X, Matrix.
Yes.
Is there other ways to spell Matrix?
I don't know. It seems like it's like the normal one.
I thought it's when I was typing it in, I typed it in with a CKS, which is wrong.
Yeah, well, I might pronounce his name wrong, but it's like Kevin Pulsifer. I think he's one that I follow. I want to say I don't know if he still does. He used to work, I think, at ESPN or something like that. But he puts out his own. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I'm confusing him. But he puts out some detailed bracketologies that are really fun. He actually. Looks at like bubble teams too. So if you're looking for like what the NIT could look like, I don't know if anyone's doing that, but you can base it off of their bubble. So I don't know. Worth noting for diehard basketball fans. Yeah,
to break it down real quick, I mean, I'm on his Twitter, and he just 3 hours ago broke down quick bracketology. Currently, for his number 1 seeds, Auburn, Baylor, Gonzaga, Kansas. Do you agree?
That sounds about right to me.
His
think at this
Alabama, here's a couple just shockers to me. Alabama as a 7, Kentucky as a 4,
Yeah.
UConn as a 7, San Francisco, let's go Gale Dons. They're at
There you
8.
go.
8 with
Love
West
that for
Virginia,
them.
Iowa, and Boise State. I like that. Looking at some other ones, San Diego State at 10 with St. Mary's. That's 3 bids for the WCC. Davidson's a 9 seed. Colgate's a 14. I just watched a Colgate Loyola Maryland game. I don't recommend watching Patriot League games. Like, that was probably the ugliest game of and I love bad basketball. Don't get me wrong. Don't watch the Patriot League, man.
That's fair. Here's an interesting question for you that maybe we dive into. Texas Tech has been like the talk of college basketball. They've been playing great games, nearly knocked off Kansas. Do you think Texas Tech is legit? Because I've seen some people talking about them as like they could win the whole thing.
Well, Texas Tech, we talked about them I think 2 weeks ago, how would the narrative around them be different if they had beaten UVA?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's a question you truly do have to ask. Like, what would that narrative be? Would they be kind of what UVA was for those 5 years under Tony Bennett before they won a national championship, when it was consistently they're a national title contender, they're going to win, they have great defense. The difference with Texas Tech is they have a pretty efficient offense. You got wins over Iowa State, Baylor. They already beat Kansas at home and then took them to a double overtime thriller, like you were saying, on the road. And they have a couple other opportunities to really bolster their resume. They have Baylor, Texas twice on their schedule. They have Oklahoma State. Looking at other top 50 matchups, you have Oklahoma 2 more times and West Virginia. What was the question? Do I think they could win the national title? I mean, they're going to be battle tested come the end of the season. If they drop 1 or 2 more conference games, I think they're going to be fine, and I think they've set themselves up for a really, really solid run at it.
Yeah, they'll be interesting. I'm glad you mentioned the thing about the offense and the defense too, because that's like one of the biggest things that people always forget is they're like, like a UVA when it won the national title was like top 5 efficiency in like both offense and defense, and people they try to find a team. Like, I think that's an interesting one with like LSU. It's like LSU's offense is 130th in efficiency. Yep. If you have one end of the floor where you're not nearly as good, it tends to be an issue in terms of like picking a team to go deep. That's why like someone like Baylor is top 10 in both, Arizona's top 11 in both, Houston, Villanova, they're like good at both. Purdue's like a fascinating kind of outlier, 65th in defensive efficiency, number 1 in offensive. So it's like, it's worth considering when you're filling out a bracket or making bets in the NCAA tournament, for someone maybe to go far looking at a future. Consider both ends of the floor in terms of efficiency and what they do. Because if you're only good on one end, it can be tough if you like don't bring your A game defensively or something.
Yeah. And I think Texas Tech, I think that was the problem for a lot of those Tony Bennett UVA teams too.
Yeah.
It was just they had no offense. And then, like you said, the year they win the national title, you have Diakite, DeAndre Hunter, Kyle Guy, Ty Jerome, and a Kihei Clark who decides to just be this star during March. Like, they had a potent offense to go along with a pack line defense that no one could move the ball against. So, and then Texas Tech is that. They're number 4 in defense, number 56 in offense. But they went blow for blow with Kansas, 94-91. A bad offense doesn't put up 90 points.
Yeah, I mean, they're solid enough offensively that, like, all right, maybe they can make something happen. You'd still like to see that maybe a little higher if you want to pick them as like a Final Four team. But they got it going a little bit. They're a scary team, and one that I did not think was going to be as good as they are.
Yeah, neither did I. When Chris Beard left to go to Texas, I thought they'd kind of not be in free fall, but I didn't think they would be a top 14 team in Ken Palm and be a true contender. But here we are.
Here we are.
You ready to pick some games?
I am so ready.
All right. First up on Thursday, biggest game of Thursday's day, both in fan match, both in thrill score, and in just the game itself. Purdue at Iowa.
This is a heck of a matchup. It being at Iowa, I think is pretty fascinating. Pretty good home court advantage. 7th in D1 according to Ken Palm. They're really good offensively, not as good defensively. Purdue, really good offensively, not as good defensively. I would consider looking at the over. although I think it's got a chance to be kind of high. So maybe take a peek there. I always lean Purdue, and then Purdue loses and like makes me upset when I actually bet them. But I would like lean Purdue here because I worry about Iowa's ability to stop them in the post. They give up a bunch of offensive rebounds. I worry a little bit about what they have down low. They got like really good players who are like 6'8", but again, Purdue's got giants.
Yeah, I just really struggle betting against Zach Edey and Travion Williams and Jaden Ivey. Like watching them play.
They're so good.
Even against Wisconsin, where they were kind of getting blown out of the gym, they started that game on like an 11-1 run or 11. Like they were up by 10 in the first 5 minutes. And if they just kept that pace, they win by 40. If we're extrapolating out over 40 minutes, but they're a really good basketball team, and I think Iowa's a good basketball team. I just wouldn't put really in front of it at this point in the season. Give me Purdue -2 all day. Well, Purdue looking like it'll be around -2. Granted, being at home is huge for Iowa. Like you said, one of the best home court advantages in the nation. And that actually matters in college basketball. But even with that, I think Purdue and their big men, big men travel. Might not be most comfortable travel, but they travel. So
great point.
Thank you. St. Mary's at San Francisco. Oh, you know where I'm going. Where are you going?
You'll probably say the Gales and mean the Dons, or say the Dons and mean the Gales. But
this is the Gale-Don rivalry.
This is the rivalry. You got a San Francisco team coming off a nice road win over Pepperdine where they spanked them after a couple of losses to BYU and Gonzaga. Pretty big spot for San Francisco, I feel like. They don't have, like, bad losses, really, but they also don't have any signature wins. I think this would help them a lot. Can kind of say the similar thing about St. Mary's, although I like St. Mary's wins a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think San Francisco finds a way to get it done at home. I think it gives them kind of a signature win. Yeah.
I agree. Is it my blind loyalty to San Francisco? No, it's not, because I actually think San Francisco's a really solid team. Gonzaga's been blowing out people with ease, and they kept it kind of close. And then they hold Pepperdine. Granted, Pepperdine is a sub 280 Ken Palm team, but they hold them to under 50 points. They put the smack on Marymount. They put the smack on San Diego, smack on yeah, they don't have any signature wins, but they're taking care of business against teams they need to take care of business on. Loyola Chicago, you only lose by 5. BYU, you only lose by 2. Mm-hmm. I think this is a really good San Francisco team, and they're very similar in terms of advanced stats and what they've done. So give me the Dons to beat the Gales. Granted, if someone wants to send me one of those St. Mary's pullover sweaters that coaching staff wears that say Gales, I will buy a St. Mary's future ticket to win the national championship if that happens.
Well, there you go. I also think the under is an interesting play here. You got two really good defenses. They don't move at the fastest tempo. I think the thing that's interesting is like San Francisco is 131 in tempo, but if you look at their offensive possessions, they're a little bit slower. Teams tend to go faster against them. And St. Mary's moves at a glacial pace. So I think both offenses are going to be fine moving slower than people might expect, and they play good defense. So if you want to buckle down for like an under 126, this feels like the game to do it, folks.
That sounds so boring.
It's so boring.
Bet.
Very sexy bet.
Do you want to go CAA mid-major talk here, or do you want to go more WCC?
I'm going to bet some Thursday Colonial Athletic Association games.
Okay, so then let's go CAA talk. Let's go full CAA talk, Colonial. I assume you're going to be betting Hofstra Charleston, but I don't think you're going to be betting the spread on that one. I think you're going to be betting the over. Am I right?
Give me the over. Give me the over. Love the over here. You got a reasonably fast-paced game because Charleston goes fast. Hofstra's not.
You just love Charleston's pace. They're the fastest team in the country, so I think for the rest of the season, you're on Charleston overs.
Hofstra's also really good at, like, scoring, right? They're not the best defense in the world. We saw them play a high-flying. It was 87-80 against JMU. This just feels like one that's going to be a lot of points, going to be a lot of threes. They're going to be moving fast. Charleston's not playing great right now, but they've been somewhat competitive the last few, like close losses to Towson and JMU, and then they were able to beat William and Mary, which William and Mary, they're just a few plays away from being undefeated. But aside from those few plays, they're 4-16. They're not great, but they found a way to beat them. I think this one's going to be high tempo. I think there's going to be a lot of points. You're probably looking at an over that's close to 160, and I still like the over because I think at least one team's getting 85-90, and I think it's actually going to be a close game because Charleston's been hanging with teams and not a ton of blowouts for Hofstra, especially on the road.
I like it. Charleston showed a lot of kind of grit these last couple of games, and they play at such a high tempo. They're a fun team to watch.
Grit.
Fun team to watch. They also took UNC to the brink earlier in the season. People aren't talking about that one enough, but they took UNC to the brink. Drexel at JMU. I know which side you're going to be on. I think I might fade you on this one.
Wow, that's hard. I was going to kick this to you because you've been on the JMU train the last couple of games. I like them in a bounce back spot here. I feel like the messaging, and I'm reading too much into this, but the messaging with JMU early after their COVID pause was like, oh, we're going to be so rusty and we're going to stink and it's going to be so hard to get out of it. And then they kind of stunk and were really rusty. And maybe that's like all fair.
It was hard for them to get out of it. Like
it felt like a self-fulfilling prophecy where they're like, oh, we're going to struggle. And then they did, where they really had no reason to say that. Especially it's been a few, like, they played a bunch of games after this pause. Like, they should just be playing good basketball now. I don't really understand that excuse. I think they're going to get back to it because now they've kind of talked about like, oh, we're getting our legs underneath us and all this stuff. Should have beaten UNCW, did beat Charleston. They need to be a little better down the stretch. But if you have them, as Ken Palm is saying, it's like a 1-point favorite or a short favorite here. I like them over Drexel. They're really, really good at home. They should be undefeated at home, including the win over Virginia. The only loss they have is a buzzer beater against UNCW where they choked down the stretch. So
and Hofstra.
I just like the matchup a lot for them.
They lost to Hofstra at home by 7.
I forgot about that game. So they did lose that one to Hofstra, but that was their first game after a COVID pause. They should have one loss at home. They're really good at home is essentially the point, right? They beat an Old Dominion, George Mason, Virginia. Like most of their best wins are at home. They've played their best at home. I think that's, no arguments there. If you want to push back with stats that they lost a game technically, totally fair.
Was that a loss or was that a learning experience? You let me
right.
know.
If two learning experiences, one should have been a non-learning experience win. But I like them at home. I think they're due for like a really good showing on both ends. The defense has faded here recently.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said makes sense, right? They're a really good home team. They should have their legs back under them after a COVID pause where they've now looked a little shaky coming out of the gates after that. But this spot for Drexel, they're coming off a demoralizing 83-75 loss at home against William and Mary. They now go on a 4-game road trip, highlighted by games against Towson and Delaware. And then they have other games in sub-200 Ken Palm teams against JMU and UNC Dub. Give me the Dragons here. Zach Spiker is going to have his squad ready to go. And if it's a 1-point game, I'm going Drexel money line. Drexel money line. But if it's like a 3-point spread, give me Drexel +3. I think it's going to be a really close game. I think these teams are really even. What, the 139th best? Like, this is a classic CAA mid-season bout. It's two below-average teams that are going to sock each other in the mouth a few times. I think Drexel has one more run in them than JMU. And I think in this spot, they're just going to get up more. A long road trip. This is the first game. Let's get it off going to a good start, especially after losing to William and Mary. And if it's a close spread, if it's a 1-point, 2-point spread, give me Drexel money line. If it's like 3-4, give me Drexel.
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup. JMU has been the worst team in the conference defensively during conference play, best offensive team. Earlier in the year, the defense was kind of carrying them. So a weird flip there. We'll see if they can, start playing better there. I think they will. You think they won't? So be it. Cam Winter for Drexel, Player of the Year candidate, really good player. So I respect that pick.
And I assume you also want to talk about Delaware Towson really quick because Towson's a top 100 Ken Palm team, or do you want to move to Friday?
I'm probably not going to bet that game, but that's probably, you could make an argument that's the best game in the conference of the week. But I think I'm going to lean with that over and stay away from this Delaware Towson game. Although if I would go one way, I would go with Delaware Delaware just played Towson on Monday, lost by 7 on the road. Now they're at home. He might have a similar line. So I'd probably lean Delaware in that one.
I like it. Friday, not a lot happening. We have a great A-10 showdown between Rhode Island and Dayton. Rhode Island just played Richmond last night. We're recording on Wednesday, so they played Richmond on Tuesday. They had a huge lead at one point in the first half, and then into about 12 minutes left in the second half. And then they ended up losing by 7 to Richmond. Richmond, not to get too off base here, kind of starting to put things together. They're 4-3 in conference play, but they've won their last 3. They've won 4 of their last 5. I think Richmond's starting to put it together. But I'm talking about Rhode Island here. They're playing Dayton. I think Dayton wins this one. They're favored to win by 6. Dayton's a good team. Dayton has huge wins this season against Kansas, Virginia Tech, St. Louis, and I feel like there was one other huge upset they pulled, but I might be conflating it with some other things. I think Dayton goes in and not goes in. They defend home court and beat Rhode Island.
Yeah, Friday to me doesn't interest me at all. I like your logic there. You got anything else on this day that you like? I'll just listen to your Friday takes all day long because
Fridays are always the boring days.
Fresno State, Boise.
Boise State's dead to me. They've cost me too much money. Like, they're a good team. What, they're 40? Here's a quick aside on Boise State. They haven't lost a game since December 3rd. They're the 9th best defense. They have an abysmal offense, 159th in offense. In offense.
They haven't lost since December 3rd. Their last 3 wins have been by a combined, I think it's 11 points.
Utah State, San Diego State, and Wyoming. And then they play Fresno State and Wyoming, 2 more top 57 teams. They're going to drop one of them. Probably.
Give me Fresno State as a best bet.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you used this logic for the Utah State.
I did. I'm going back to the well.
Awesome. Love that. But they've just cost me too much money. All right. Moving on to Saturday. This is a packed day. We'll try not to, belabor any of these. We'll try to keep this one a little bit quicker just because I feel like there's a more games that we want to hit than normal on Saturday. Starting things off, we're going to go with the best game of the day. Kentucky at Kansas. Kansas is favored to win by 3. The status of Ty Washington is going to be one to watch in this one. I imagine he might be back. I think you're Googling it now as I see your fingers typing.
Take a quick little look.
But Ty Washington, just to talk about him real quick while you're looking him up. One of the best freshmen in the nation, 6'3", 197. He's one of the top contributors to Kentucky's offense. He's been huge. Kentucky had a good little lead against Auburn. And then when he went out, I believe he rolled his ankle or something to that effect. Auburn came roaring back and ended up winning by 9. So he's going to be key in this one. If he plays, like, Kentucky wins. If Ty Washington doesn't play, I think Kansas goes in and defends home court, where Kansas hasn't lost at home this season, and they're like some absurd 150-14 or something like that under Bill Self at Allen Fieldhouse.
I think I might take Kansas either way. So Ty Washington didn't play Tuesday, and they went to overtime at home against Mississippi State. They really faded against Auburn. I don't know if he'll be ready or 100%. I like Kansas regardless. I think some people might be like, oh, maybe I'll take Kentucky after some close calls for Kansas recently, including that overtime game with Texas Tech. I just think Kansas at home, they're really good. They're a really good team. I think they'll find a way to win, especially if Kentucky's not healthy.
I will say they did lose against the spread against who was it?
Texas Tech.
Why do I feel like I wrote about this, but now it's not coming back to me?
Might just go money line.
I like Kansas. Yeah, it was Texas Tech. I picked Texas Tech to cover the spread, and they did. With everything you just said about Ty Washington, I flip it. Kansas, they're going to win, cover the spread. Kansas wins. They're too good at home. They're so good at home.
Really
Next up, Baylor at Alabama. Before you even dive into this one, give me Baylor at -4 all day and twice on Sunday. Am I right?
Probably, but the heart wants what the heart wants, and I'm going to take Alabama.
You're lying. You think it's a bounce back spot for the Crimson?
I think they're due for a good showing. They're still pretty good at home. The Auburn game was super competitive. They beat LSU. They got to win over Tennessee. Like those are the last 3 home games or 4 home games. They beat Missouri, beat LSU, barely lost to Auburn, beat Tennessee. That's pretty good. So I like them at home. I think they'll find a way to bounce back. The issue is that Baylor has a ton of length. They're exceptional on both ends. Definitely a better team, but I'll say Alabama at home puts one like stellar performance together and creates this absurd list of wins with Gonzaga, Baylor, and Houston.
Do you think Alabama? So you think Alabama money line?
Oh yeah, give me Alabama money.
Oh, this is it. Oh wow, Alabama money line. All right, I see you. Yeah, I disagree wholeheartedly, but I guess we'll be live tweeting that game on Saturday, and we'll be hitting jabs at each other on Twitter. Tennessee at Texas. I think I'll let you go first on this. I took the air out of the balloon last time. You can hit this one.
Tennessee, man, do something for me on the road. They're good at home, but they haven't done anything on the road. Texas is like, I don't know, they're okay. Like they had a little hiccups recently here with these losses to Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State. They're not the best team in the world. Neither of these teams are really all that good. They're both solid. It's just hard for me to pick Tennessee on the road because I haven't been thrilled with how they played on the road. So my gut would tell me Texas. It's a stay away for me just because I've been on Tennessee on and off a lot this year. And I don't have a great feel for this spot. Maybe we'll see what happens Wednesday against Florida. But it feels like one they could lose, and it's like, whatever, who cares? And then you bounce back in SEC play and make a run there.
All right, so stay away for you. I'm going Tennessee. And I know last week I talked about how Tennessee has let me down in every big spot that I have bet them. And what is this? A big spot for Tennessee yet again. However, I think this time the Volunteers, they're getting healthy. They had some guys off of missed games due to COVID. But I think they're fully back in, and this is the time where they get their feet underneath them. Kind of like what you were saying about JMU and why you like JMU in that game on Thursday. Kind of the same reasons I like Tennessee in this one. It is at Texas, and that's going to be tough to go down to Austin and try and upset the Longhorns at home. But I think this is a big spot for Tennessee. This is a prove them wrong game because I think a lot of the national pundits are kind of writing off Tennessee and kind of chalking up that Arizona win earlier on in the season as luck. They're home. It doesn't really matter too much. Tennessee goes on the road, beats Texas, and kind of puts themselves back into that national championship discussion. Not in it, on maybe in the outskirts of it, but they're back being mentioned in that conversation.
I like that.
Marquette, Providence.
Marquette's been playing great basketball, so that makes it a tough pick.
Right.
They blew out Providence, which is kind of what started their stretch of really good basketball. This feels like a really good spot for me, at least, to see what happens with the Wednesday game. So you got Marquette, Seton Hall. If Seton Hall can knock off Marquette, maybe I'll think differently. But I love it if Marquette beats Seton Hall to then hop on Providence.
I wrote an article for DRF Sports for the Providence Xavier game where all the sims, I think the money too. Let me check that. No, the 71% of the public's on Providence, probably because they're ranked higher. But all the sims, all the power lines are saying that Xavier wins this one by double digits. They're going to cover the spread. Money's going towards Providence. When I wrote the article, they were 9.5-point dogs. They're 7.5-point dogs now. But Providence, 16-2 straight up this season. But here's where they're kind of really good. Against the spread, they're 5-0 as an underdog. And There's another spot where it kind of shocked me. I should have this one in my back pocket ready to go. But they're 8-0 against the spread against teams that outscore their opponents by 4+ a game. So they're good against good teams. And wrong sport, got to find it. 6-1 straight up against conference opponents this season. That's all. So I like Providence. And the run loss was getting blown out of the gym by Marquette. I like Providence. I'm on the Providence train. Give me Ed Cooley all day.
I like them too.
Oh, wait. So you're on Providence too? -2?
That would be my lean, yeah, for sure.
All right. Bet. Anything else on Saturday?
No, it's a good set of games. I think VCU Richmond's an interesting Virginia one that you could take a look at. You mentioned Richmond seems like it's playing better basketball. VCU has a couple of disappointing losses recently. I think I kind of like Richmond at home there. I would definitely consider taking that.
I like it. Richmond at home, baby. Jacob Gilliard didn't have that great of a game against Rhode Island, too, and they were able to come back and win.
Special group, man.
Can you name anyone else on that team?
Head coach Chris Mooney.
You can't even name their star big man?
Oh, I can picture him. He's got the long hair, right?
And like the
Golden?
gruffy beard.
Is it Golden or something?
What's his first name?
I don't know.
Grant Golden. Give that to me every day.
I should absolutely know that, but I do not.
Anything on Sunday? Like, what was that?
He's a good player.
He is a good player. You're correct. Sunday. It's always hard to talk about Sunday because there's so much that has to happen between when we record on Wednesday and Sunday. I think the biggest game is the Loyola Chicago Drake game. Loyola Chicago, they lost Porter Moser to Oklahoma, and they're still the best mid-major in the country.
I like it's at Drake, which is challenging, but I think they could still pick up that win.
I think so too. Ken Palm only has them as 3-point favorites. I think they're kind of better than that. Remember last year, this is a complete aside, and we'll wrap up everything. Drake, remember when they were like undefeated against the spread for like 95% of the year?
You know, it's the same thing like when FanDuel tweets out one of those parlays and they're like, this random person put a $10 bet down for first NBA basket in 7 games, made $100,000.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could do that. And then the next day I do it. And it's like I go 0 for 5 and I'm like, oh, and now I know why they tweet this out. Because they want everyone else to do it because you're going to lose like 99.99% of the time. It feels very similar with like those teams when it's like midway through the season. They're like, they're 12-2. And I'm like, let's hop on the bandwagon. And they can't cover for like 2 weeks in a row. And I'm like, I don't know why you guys do this to me. But yeah, wouldn't it be cool like going into the season to be like, you know what? I'm riding Drake. And then they go like 14-0 and you're just like, woo.
I think at one point it was like if you bet a unit, if you bet $10 every game and then reinvested your winning.
That's the other thing they do. That's ridiculous. It's like if you rolled this over, it's like, why would I roll it over every time? If you then decided to put 10 grand on a random Drake non-conference game, you could have had 30 grand. It's like, well, why would I do that?
I also love the language you could have had if you just did this one simple thing. And it's like, well, no, it was 14 different things.
Right. Also, if you're an idiot who decided before the season you're picking Drake and you're blindly riding Drake.
And you're rolling your winnings into each bet, not saying it's $10 each time. It's I'm going to take my unit and then when it becomes $30, I'm going to bet $30. And when 30 becomes 100, no, I'm not doing that ever. I'm sticking to the unit system. Bankroll management, people. Bankroll management.
Doesn't make any sense.
All right. Moving on from all that. We got to wrap things up.
Okay.
Before we wrap things up, where can everyone find you on social medias and where your written work is and where you can write about legislation and betting stuff?
Yes. I've talked about my Tennessee love. Soon my Tennessee love will potentially be moved to different sites. But I'll be working at I am working at.
Yeah.
Soon I'll start working. I've been here for 3 months and gosh, soon I might start actually doing some stuff. Sports Handle is where a lot of my work is going to be, or US Bets. And you can find me on Twitter at Bennett Conlon, tweet most of those stories, especially the main ones. So you can pretty much find everything there. And check it out. You got some game previews mixed in, but definitely a lot of interesting legislation. Louisiana, they're launching on Friday. Mobile betting.
BetMGM. BetMGM is the first one to go into that state.
Yeah, they're going to have a whole bunch of them popping up there. So they got that going. And Arkansas, folks, it's getting dramatic. They got a revenue sharing rule that the national operators don't like. They're supposed to have a Wednesday meeting today, Jack, to move forward with this. And it got stripped off the Legislative Council agenda. More discussion is needed. Sounds like maybe some lobbyists with the operators have gotten some influence here late in the game.
No, I love the play-by-play. You know, some other really fun stuff, really interesting stuff.
Do I have more?
No, I'm saying, do you want to know more? I have more for you.
I thought you were asking for more. I was like, I just gave you 2 gems. Yes, no. Of course I want to know more.
DRF Sportsbook is now live in Iowa. So if you're in Iowa, next time we're in Iowa, because we go to Iowa so often.
Or our winter Iowa trips we do.
Yeah, we do 4 during the season of winter. So one of those 4 trips to Iowa, We can place our bets at ia.drf.com, or you can download the DRF Sportsbook app on the Apple App Store or Google Play Store. A lot of great stuff. One of the best interfaces, and it's not because they sign my paychecks that I'm saying this. I'm saying this because it's a really nice interface, and I'm kind of really tough on interfaces, like UI and UX, I think is what it's called, user experience, whatever that stuff is. Really tough on that. But DRF Sportsbook, if you're in Iowa, check it out. And if you listen to the Washed Up Walk-Ons podcast here in the next couple of weeks, they're going to have some really exciting stuff to do with DRF Cash Grab and DRF Sportsbook. So be on the lookout there. We'll push you on over to Washed Up Walk-Ons. But with all that housekeeping stuff out of the way, we got to get to our best bets. Hit me with your best bets. You can go as many as you want, but remember that you tend to do worse the more you give.
Thanks for the reminder. But we're going with a lot today. We're
going with 82.
All right.
Every Saturday game's the best bet. I'm parlaying it.
St. Mary's in San Francisco under, but we're not going under 124. So very specific there. We're taking that Thursday under. We're not going to go under that certain amount. Hofstra, Charleston, don't care what the number is. They could set it at 200, taking the over. Hofstra, Charleston, there's another Thursday one. And then let's do JMU. I'm just going to say JMU money line because watching that team at the end of the game frightens me. So I'm going to take JMU money line over Drexel on Thursday. There are 3 right there for you. Then Friday, we'll just stick to 1, right? I'll take your advice here. I'll limit what I'm doing on Friday.
That was 3 for Thursday? Jeez.
It doesn't matter. Taking your advice on Friday. Fresno State, money line over Boise State.
You're just doing that for the same – this is what got you into the Utah State problem.
What was the other game this year? I think it might have been Georgia. I don't want to say, like, what to tell people to do with their money. I'm not telling you to put your mortgage on this. I'm just saying if you do, it could be a wise investment. So I think Fresno State is the lock of the century. It's a late game, which favors Fresno. They love those late games. That one I made up, okay? I don't know if that does, but they're pretty good at home. They're playing at home against a Boise State team that's winning a lot. The Boise State's winning too much for me. I don't think that makes sense. They're due to lose. So I'm going with Fresno State on Friday. Anytime you say something's due, that's faulty logic, but it's what I'm rolling with. So we're trusting that. And then Saturday's really the good games, and it's where I don't even want to bet on. They're so good. I think Florida State.
That's counterintuitive.
They're so good, and I love the value in these bad games. I like Florida State. They've been playing great basketball. We'll see what happens Wednesday against Georgia Tech. Florida State at home against a Virginia Tech team that looks absolutely lost. Give me Florida State, whatever the spread is there. I think the Seminoles cover that on Saturday.
Sorry, I missed that.
What's that?
Florida State against who?
Virginia Tech. The Hokies look absolutely lost. I've got some Virginia Tech people in my Twitter feed, and every time they have a game, it's just like a Mike Young quote after the game. It's like, we got outplayed. It's like it just keeps happening. It's like Groundhog Day. And I got to throw in one more, right?
You don't need this many.
Alabama money line over Baylor.
Yeah, you were pretty high on that one. I want to ask you a question before I give out my 3 best bets.
Sure.
Are all of these best bets of yours, like, are these best bets?
Yes, and Richmond money line over VCU.
Stop it!
And those are my best bets. Okay, that's all I got. I'm gonna go back this week. Had some personal things I was doing today where I was unable to do this. I want to go back from the beginning and listen just to the end of our podcast and have a full best bet count. So hold me accountable there. I will do that for the next week, and we'll come back and see how it is. It's gonna be funny too because I'm gonna be like 42-20, and you're gonna be like 15-7. Although I was also giving us way more favorable splits than what we have. I'm not 42-20.
Yeah, I think we're both about 500.
Yeah, but what do I have this week? Like 7 or 8? I got to write these.
You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
You added the Richmond money line?
I did.
Okay.
Trust me,
that's
I got
perfect.
it.
7 feels like a good number.
You do always. I'm in the camp that you should always have your best bets or something like that in odds so that you have a winning or losing record. That makes sense, right?
You mean like tracking the?
Yeah, it's just boring to go 500.
Yeah.
Best bets for me, we're going to this side of it. Let's start on Thursday, of course, as one does. I'm going to fade you. I don't think JMU beats Drexel.
I think you did this once before, and JMU probably won by a million.
Yeah, they won. I think they destroyed whoever I picked.
I hope it wasn't that Northeastern one.
I don't think it was. I think it was a non-conference game.
Okay.
No, but I like Drexel in that spot. They just came off from getting embarrassed by one of the worst teams in the country, who, if you ask any of the William and Mary fans, they are really just 1 or 2 shots away from being 20-0, but instead they're 4-16 and absolutely trash. But I really like Drexel in that one. That's Thursday. I also love on Thursday, Purdue to cover against Iowa.
Really? On the road?
On the road. I just am really high on Purdue. Ever since you said they're a national title contender early on in the season, I've been watching with a little bit more not closeness, but more, what's that thing when you watch something with more
interest, excitement,
critiqueness?
I don't know if that's a word, but it sounds good.
That's not
keenness, keen eye.
Sure, but and they're really good. And Zach Edey and Travion Williams are just man amongst boys. Friday, I've got nothing. Saturday, I've got something. What is it?
Can't even give the people a Friday night winner? My God.
Well, I'll give out a Friday night winner. I won't give out a Friday night best bet. You ready for it?
Yeah.
Friday night winner. I'll do a Mountain West parlay for Friday.
Okay, here we go.
Mountain West parlay. Boise State, money line. These are all money lines because it's going to be a parlay. Boise State, Colorado State, New Mexico.
Okay.
That's all of them. Oh, I missed one. And Wyoming.
I like that.
Nice little 4-leg parlay. Hit that, make some money. Next, and then Saturday. Ooh, this is tough. But you know what? I'm going for my best bet on Saturday.
What?
Indiana over Maryland. I think Maryland's a little inflated after its win.
Did Maryland do something good?
Maryland beat Illinois without Kofi Coburn. Waxed Illinois, though.
Good for them.
And then they've gone on to back that up with an 8-point win over Rutgers. But because of those two things, I think they're a little bit inflated right now. Indiana's coming off of the high of beating Purdue at home. They then got kind of destroyed by Michigan at home.
This is a genius play. I love this play.
Do you actually?
Yes.
Why? Wait, now I'm concerned that you're so in love with this play.
That feels like one where if it's like Indiana, a short road favorite, if that's what the line ends up being, and people are like, wow, haven't they struggled recently? And Maryland's been playing great. That feels like a great spot where like that's a kind of spot where like the sports books make money. So I like that Indiana side a lot if that's where you're going. Perfect.
That is the side I'm going. I think I'm a little high on them. They're a fun team. So I got 3: Drexel money line, Purdue -2, Indiana. I had my Mountain West Friday night parlay though.
We have a high low. Do we have a high low?
You can hit me with your high low. I've stopped looking at them because they're just way too hard to do.
Okay.
What's your high low though? It sounds like you had one.
Yeah, well, I always have a high low.
Give me your high low.
You know me. Well, I don't want to give it out, and the people would have it and take the money away from me, which I don't love.
That's how betting works.
Let's go on Saturday because that's when we've got a lot of these games. Alabama to cover. I do like them to win, but Alabama to cover in the parlay will be safe.
You have so much exposure on Alabama.
Yeah, we'll be safe there, and then you need a low, right? This is a game. I mean, a day filled with highs, but for the low or the mid-major, I kind of want to go back to the Richmond well. I think if you do Richmond money line and Alabama spread, it's kind of a similar to the best bet, but a little variation there. I think that's a fun parlay.
All right. Richmond money line, Alabama spread.
They're also both at 4:00. So if you want to switch around, you only want to watch one, but you'll know by 6:00 what you got. You'll know whether you can buy dinner that night or if you have a second mortgage or whatever. So that's always fun.
All right. Anything else you need to add?
No, that's perfect.
Perfect. For Bennett Conlin, my name's Jack Fitzpatrick. Thank you guys for tuning in to the DRF College Sports Podcast. We'll see you next Thursday with all the winners, because I know what we just handed out tonight were all the winners. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the DRF College Sports Podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show. For more sports betting advice, go to drf.com/sports, and you can follow DRF Sports on Twitter at DRF_sports.